We refer to the sky. In fact, we are referring to a phrase of the German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who said that what astonished him more, or what somehow is more subject, is at the same time the sky, the starry sky, and at the same time the moral law within myself. So we have these two words which after 2 centuries have changed. And now our sky is full of different stars. It's stars which are outbound. It's a world of interactions. And at the same time, you have your identity, which is changing, which is growing, is becoming more digital.
Well, I think, when we talk about ethical standards in general, it's something that we need to be cognizant of when in IT in general, to be honest with you, because you're going to have a different relationship between yourself and your bank, the government, your friends, your peers, your colleagues. I think people are fixated with the idea of creating just a single identity, creating an ethical boundary around it, and try to behave within that confine. I don't think that that's humanity. I mean, I think humanity is a mixture, let's call it a potpourri, if you will, of identities, of personalities. So my interaction with my friends is going to be different than my colleagues. I also have certain regulations and standards that I have to adhere to. Obviously there's a lot of corporate, let's call it, governance around the way that I behave in the office space, what I can and can't do. So I think that kind of conditions you a little bit. I mean, I believe that we have a single identity with many profiles, and based on the interaction that we have with those people, or the subjects, if you will, or in some cases processes, I'm going to adapt my identity to interact in a certain way that accommodates interaction between the two, myself and some other entity.
There is no need to distinct these two worlds, the cloud and the so-called edge computing are actually coming together as never before. And this is leading to huge opportunities for developers, for organizations around the world. In Microsoft, we talk about metaverse applications. Imagine, taking any complex environment and applying the power of technology to create inspiring experience. The possibilities are just endless. This convergence between digital and physical world, so it is anachronistic, keeping them separated. The next set of benefits, beside the opportunity on developers and organizations to create world that might reflect their future opportunities. The next benefit comes from simulation, which takes copy of the digital twin and runs simulations on them. So things like what if questions, or seeking insights, or optimization from complex environment. So we now have the opportunity with a grain of salt, well, much more than a grain of salt on the ethical part. We have the opportunity to simulate something that was impossible in the past to achieve by simply monitoring a physical environment. We can run simulations. Imagine, plane pilots, imagine doctors, imagine even constructor, and I can bring examples on each of these industry that will allow us to get the benefit out of this convergence between digital and physical world. I can apply some what-if analysis on what could happen in my phygital world, let's call it so, but that gives me the opportunity to potentially predict with proper artificial intelligence algorithm, well managed, what if I'm going to do this on this, surgical operation? What if I'm going to do that on this, bridge building? So that's the kind of things that we have the chance to address right now, and we didn't in the past. It's going to become a metaverse application in a world that, encompasses and embraces both the actual physical and the potential, let me call it so, digital world.
Today, our lives mean we have multiple digital personalities, digital profiles. And this creates challenges for identity management, for ensuring the privacy and the the free speech of the individual and their multiple different identities. And I think for a company such as McAfee, I mean, we are a consumer and an enterprise company that is looking to protect the digital identities of organizations, employees, and of individuals. And it's a challenging task because people take on different personas in different environments. We strive to ensure that this identity is protected and is managed, but there's always a sense of self-responsibility here. We have the classic analogy of younger people sometimes posting inappropriate things on their social media profiles. This can create digital identity risks when you're in a different sphere in your life. So for a company like McAfee, we're very keen and very active in protecting this personal identity, and we feel that is as well as a business task, it's an ethical task. I think the ethics of digital identity protection in the main have to come from the individual. There has to be some sense of personal responsibility. The technology can be used to empower that protection, to build that protection and build that, if you will, hermetically sealed environment. But ultimately, the ethical responsibility of an individual lies with the individual. The technology is an enabler and it is a facilitator. And all of the companies here today work very hard to ensure that those different identities are protected, either through workplace solutions, in-home solutions, in terms of HR management solutions, in terms of GDPR personal integrity protections. So there are multiple facets to it, but ultimately the ethical dimension is driven by the individual.
I had the fortune of working for a couple startups, and I had a very deep philosophical discussion with the CTO of one of the startups who was involved in the ARPANET project and ultimately bought the internet from the military, obviously, to commercial use. And I remember what he said. His name was Ashok Segu. I remember what he said, which was kind of an interesting thing. He said, this is going to allow people to interact, okay, in a virtual world. And I keep thinking about that because, at Oracle, we spend a lot of time considering all the lessons that we've learned, the recent debacle with the social media platforms and everything like that. I think we've gotten into a situation where the internet is a wonderful but dangerous place, right? So when we talk about, new personas sort of having access to this media, to this endless media, you talk about a three-dimensional identity. In essence, what's happening is you are creating you're leveraging a platform, you're leveraging an environment in which, you're in essence are able, or you're free, you have total limitless creativity on what you want to project yourself as. The question is, and I keep harping on this, the question is, do I want to remain in this ethical boundary? If I'm going to put some inappropriate content of myself on the internet, am I willing to assume the risk that somebody's going to eventually, potentially judge me on what I provide? So again, it's kind of a scary world, especially for folks that didn't grow up with the internet and, and the web from the get-go. But again, it represents an opportunity for us to ultimately do things that we've never thought of, to be honest with you. And I don't think we've stopped in terms of innovating technologies. I mean, Oracle spends a lot on the enterprise, obviously. Most of our business is focused on large enterprise customers, medium and large enterprise customers, predominantly in 3 business lines. And in that, data protection, privacy are fundamental to us. I mean, McAfee, they probably know the game better than anyone else. Also, security is very, very important to us.
We're in a world where, as individuals and as employees and as citizens, we're continuously experimenting with digital platforms. We're continuously experimenting with how to project ourselves for the different personas that we play in our lives. And this creates a number of opportunities, but a number of challenges. And on the opportunities front, I would argue that we're able to transcend the globe, so much more easily, so much more readily, and with so many less hierarchical barriers than we were even 2 years ago, pre-COVID. And that's a wonderful place to be in terms of innovation, in terms of creativity, in terms of partnering easily and readily. And it's our mission to protect those partnership environments, these digital enabling partnership environments, and that's what we're focused on. The challenges are, I believe, individuals very often as citizens and sometimes as employees are not prudent enough in the way that they share information, the way that they configure sometimes their security and their privacy settings. So the authenticity of interaction that digital solutions provide them has risks, has personal identity risks, and that's something we all need to be mindful of.
Microsoft, as you called out, is investing heavily in terms of digitizing or supporting the digitalization of our country, and Italy is just an example. We're doing this across many other countries and continents across the world. But in Italy, we are investing something close to $1.5 billion for supporting the I wouldn't call it evolution. I would say the innovation that Italy deserves to have in the digital world. In terms of transparency, well, Microsoft is a company that has one of his mantra or one of his values in full transparency. Talking about transparency for what we build and what we develop in terms of platform that empower the people to achieve more, people or organizations to achieve more. I'm going to call out a couple of things that shows the real transparency that the company is having to ensure that our products are going to adhere to the principle that are helping people to know what their algorithms are driving and extracting. We want to be, in any case, reliable. That's common, safe. People from McAfee, Oracle knows what I'm talking about better than anybody else. Private, secure, inclusive, transparent, and accountable. So to do that, we have built within Microsoft an office of responsible AI. We were talking about artificial intelligence and ethics that are tightly interconnected, in my opinion. And so we have built an office and we have a committee talking about engineering and research, which is a significant component of Microsoft investments, that advise all the leaders across all the countries and all the continents on challenges and opportunities presented by AI innovation.
We have at the table 3 of the big tech companies, and we should have had a 4th company, which was Facebook. I tell you what has happened. We have contacted Facebook many times, many people. We have sent them the same questions that we sent you, and they said, well, it's not compliant to our policy. So I don't want to comment, I just want to show you a fact that it may be difficult for big companies having a clear definition of their behaviors and their impact on ethical behaviors.
Fear is always a good thing because it's a motivator. Yeah, of course, there's obviously the fear of being attacked because cyber attacks happen all the time. I think probably Oracle gets bombarded daily in terms of attempted attacks. And some of them do create lockdowns for us, which ultimately have an adverse effect on business.
I am talking about attacks from the media, attacks from the...
Well, obviously, as probably my colleagues would probably attest to, is what we try to avoid is bad press. We have to avoid bad press by being very good at protecting, our customers' best interest, if you will. Yeah. So that becomes a bit of a challenge, also because, again, the internet in general is becoming a very scary place because it's not only a place to conduct business, but basically everything happens on the internet. Yeah. 20 years ago was a little bit different. I think it was 20 years ago, the internet had a smaller boundary. Now it's becoming almost limitless. And, there's, as mentioned before by Mr. Hutchins, there's a certain amount of emphasis should be placed on authenticity, but also on accountability. You are responsible for what you do.
We process data for the purposes of ensuring a robust security perimeter. So our ethical responsibility is to our customers' security, be that enterprise or be that individuals. We don't use their data for advertising. We don't use their data for other purposes. Data of our customers and our individuals is processed in a way that is compliant with privacy laws in Europe and globally, but it is for a single purpose and to ensure that security is enabled and to ensure that the security perimeter is updated on a regular basis. So it incorporates all the different attacks that we see. So for us, it's about having a good partnership with our customers, with our suppliers, with our partners. We go to market, through different ways, direct through channel, but we also go to market through system integrators.
We have an integrity within our company, and we need our new employees, existing employees, in a way that everybody has to adhere to the integrity that is part of our values. So there is not only the fear to do mistakes in managing data, but it also the adherency, if you know what I mean, of our principle and values. And we're close to that 25% that Lorenzo was calling out. So everybody has to know what we can do, what we are, committed to do with data, with interactions, with providing this platform. There are many things that can go wrong, but none of those can be done without, a proper supervision among the different controls that we have applied. Because what we need to provide to the market is a platform that everybody can use. And just remember, just to say regarding Italy, our platform is used by roughly 90+% of enterprise company, and our infrastructures in terms of cloud, in terms of data center, is pervasive across small, medium, and enterprise business. But everybody knows what are the principles and the rules that we are using to manage that platform, including Microsoft is and all our ecosystem of partners. So we're talking about dozens of thousands of companies that on our platform are developing application using our database, using Oracle's database, even using McAfee authenticity and identity and whatever else we can integrate. So in reality is an ecosystem of controls that we have implemented and that we commit and we are accountable for. Majority of the threats in the past were coming internally, and that's a fact. Having integrity and having values to which we adhere, both consciously and because of the trainings and because of the, controls, in a way of saying, that we have implemented, gives us that sense of pure accountability of the importance that each of us has into this digital transformation. We have a responsibility that is among us, among all the technology players, among all the cloud providers, because we are the enabler for these transformations that we were talking at the beginning. So we have to we have to keep the integrity at the center of our thoughts.
We expect our big business partners, obviously, to behave ethically just like we do. With regard to internal attacks, I mean, that's almost a foregone conclusion that that's going to happen. There's going to be some kind of a structural component that's going to collapse, within Oracle. And we have to sort of simulate the potential risks or, the potential outcomes of these incidents to happen. Oracle spends heavily. I mean, our whole tagline around ethics, it's called Integrity Matters. And again, we have annual training.
Yeah.
We're forced, the BASI, to adhere to certain policies, if you will, and those policies are enforced with the training that happens. And
the culture of McAfee allows, through a continuous set of internal trainings, a continuous curiosity of employees to learn, will allow us to protect the data of our customers. But I wanted to make a wider point. There's a shared responsibility between different parts of the ecosystem, enterprise software platforms, collaboration platforms, security players such as us, to work to ensure the security perimeter is tight. And what I mean by that is, very often our customers and their employees and as individuals are not aware that they're creating security risks in their behavior. We all have to use so many different cloud applications in our daily lives at work and at home. We cannot always implement those and enable those in a secure way.
Okay.
And therein lies the risk. The risk is not always known. The risk is actually unknown. And that means that culture can only ever be a solution to that. We all need to have an awareness and a continuous desire to be learning and to enable a secure mindset and a secure outlook.
Okay.
Because we use hundreds of cloud services every day.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're well implemented by companies. Sometimes they're badly implemented by companies. Sometimes they're badly implemented by the customer.
Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, it's our data centers, basically, where we're moving most of our enterprise application, customers' enterprise applications to our cloud. And we have a philosophy, if you will, or design of basically rendering those data centers very dense in terms of computing power. The idea is to minimize the actual footprint of the servers that are consuming, that are utilized inside of our data centers to keep the footprint as small as possible, for instance. That's one of it. Then we have certain programs in Oracle. One in which I get involved in is that we have an objective that every year each Oracle employee has to plant an X number of trees for the environment, right?
How does it work? In effect,
we effectively go look for land, and we go and buy trees and plant the trees. And then obviously we register this. Little games that we play. We have an objective, obviously, of reducing our potable water consumption on an annual basis. I think by 4% across all Oracle offices. COVID certainly helped that out because most people didn't go to work. But we strive to do something for the environment because we believe that this planet is a sacred place, and we have to try to protect it for as long as possible, also for future generations.
Microsoft, similar to what has just been said, it's probably one of the company that has a commitment towards sustainability and toward the planet. Our president and our CEO and our CFO have taken on a commitment to become, carbon neutral by 2030.
It's a very close deadline.
It's a very close deadline. A longer deadline is the 2050, where the commitment that we talk to our investors and to our employees and partners is to remove from the planet all the CO2 emissions that Microsoft generated since the incorporation of the company in 1975. And that's a tough one. Okay, just to give you a sense, there are investments there is a climate investment funds in Microsoft that is worth more than $1 billion to find solutions that allow us to better manage the energy that we use, to improve our waste management, to improve our water consumption. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Then you can see projects such as Project Netwick, where we submerged a data center out of Scotland in front of an island in Scotland to find to see if the efficiency that we can have on managing data center that have been submerged for 18 months is better than the one on the ground. And we figured out that it was between 15 and 20% more efficient and with less failures. I don't know, it's maybe because fishes don't do mistakes, probably, but that's just one of the things that we have been addressing. In Italy, I'm a bit worried, I have to be honest about it, because Italy has a commitment to reduce the carbon footprint or the CO2 emission by 2030, same date as before, of 400 million tons of CO2. And the trajectory that we see right now, looking about data, looking about ethics, going back to the previous and stimulated question, we're not in the right path. So we need to accelerate to get those 400 million tons of CO2 removed. One of the things that we can do is, and I'm not claiming because I represent one of the company providing cloud, but is really to move to the cloud. Every solution that from on-premises is moved to the cloud is 95% more efficient in terms of energy impact and sustainability.
You say 95%?
Energy consumption is reduced because of economy of scale, because of efficiency of data center compared to a PC on the table or a server under the desk. That is the order of magnitude that we can achieve. Okay. So the cloud is absolutely utmost important for sustainability, and being a citizen of this planet, seriously, I mean, go to whatever cloud, because any cloud is more efficient than plugging a computer on the table. But that's the direction, one of the directions.
We're a SaaS company, a software as a service company. Most of our products are delivered electronically. We produce a few legacy devices, physical devices that we deploy to customers to ensure their security operations centers are robust. But in the main, I would agree, with us, my colleague from Microsoft, that it's the cloud-enabled environment and SaaS deployed solutions partnered with very, very efficient IaaS, infrastructure as a service suppliers, which will reduce the carbon footprint most quickly. So we, as a company, take our carbon footprint responsibility seriously. We've had these analyzed by an international organization, ICF, which specializes in assessing organizations' carbon footprint and how to reduce the footprint. And as a result of the COVID situation, we've accelerated our decentralization. We've accelerated the number of employees who are permanently working from home, and reduced the number of physical offices that we have.
I mean, I think it's if it can be summed up as that. I think it's what the purpose for artificial intelligence is pretty much the purpose of anything that's been put out there. There's people that are going to do something productive with it, and there's people that are going to do something non-productive with it. I think we need to set, again, I'm going to keep using this word, some ethical boundaries in terms of the way that we interact with things, because it could be a very, very dangerous thing. At Oracle, we've invested heavily in machine learning simply because it gives us, the ability to do predictive maintenance and potentially put out problems. I mean, that was our main stimulus from machine learning. Then we've escalated onto artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence is promising in certain respect with respect to enterprise, an enterprise situation. It's kind of scary from a social media perspective. I hope we do the right things with it.
We as a company need to use artificial intelligence and machine learning, as my colleague from Oracle rightly points out, to predict what the next targets will be for a particular ransomware attack, which organization, which geography, and what style of attack. So it's incredibly important for us to be able to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning, but as a company, we fully believe that this needs some kind of human oversight.
We're living with artificial intelligence since decades, since the first IBM computer beat Kasparov. We're just using artificial intelligence in a deeper way and in a more pervasive way. So we need to remember that artificial intelligence is tightly connected with machine learning, but also with ethics. So we need to adhere to principle and keep in mind that we decide where to use it, how to use it, and for what purpose. So if we keep these three things in mind and we combine the principles that we should build all together with government and institution on how to use it, we are not going to fail the overcome of artificial intelligence over human behavior, which is one of the contents of the Rome call for AI ethics. There's a beautiful book called Superintelligenza or Superintelligence that has some flaws in it, but poses some concerns that we need to address.